Welcome back to the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. I'm Joe Noga, joined by Paul Hoynes from the press box at Progressive Field following Wednesday night's 13-4 loss by the Guardians of the Miami Marlins. A pound out. The Guardians allowed a season high, tying 17 hits, including 4 home runs, 2 of them by Jacob Marcy. And Hoynesy, it was not an easy, smooth sailing night for Gavin Williams, coming back his first start after nearly throwing a no-hitter in New York last week.
Yeah, Joe. He throws 33 pitches in the first inning alone, only 19 strikes. Gives up 4 runs, including 2 home runs. Xavier Edwards starts the game with a home run, and then Marcy hits a 3-run homer to really cap that inning. So Gavin only lasted 3 innings. He kind of danced around the subject of whether, throwing 126 pitches in his no-hit bid, against the Mets, if that affected him last night. But he finally said, throwing 126 pitches, I was fatigued a little bit more than normal. The Guardians kind of did everything they could to help him, gave him 2 extra days, right? I think he was pitching on his 7th day, maybe. Mm-hmm. But Gavin said that should have helped, but it didn't.
Yeah, it was the 2 extra off days built into that. Sort of, there was an off day the day after his near no-hitter, and then an off day on Monday of this past week. So, he should have had a little bit extra time to recuperate, but that doesn't take into account that when you have too much time, your feel, your mechanics can get out of whack and all that. I thought one of the things that was interesting that Stephen Vogt pointed out early on, the Marlins, they were, approaching Gavin in that first inning, but they were taking some really good curveballs. He said he threw a couple to Jacob Marcy and to Kyle Stowers that they just took. And, if the game plan was to lay off the breaking pitches, it really worked for the Marlins. They got to the pitches that they could hit. We saw Jacob Marcy. This is a prospect who they got in return for is when they made the trade to send a rise to San Diego. So think about how good and how deep that Padres farm system is to have a kid like Jacob Marcy, who's up here within a year, and he's producing at the major league level.
Yeah, he had a big cheering section here at the ballpark tonight, Joe. He's from Dearborn, Michigan, and his whole family was here. They saw a heck of a game. He sets a career, franchise record with 7 RBIs. He goes 4 hits, 4 for 5. 2 home runs. I mean, he's a triple shy of the cycle. That's the way you want to perform in front of your family. So, congratulations to him. But, still, even though they were down early, Joe, they came back and tied the game. I'm talking about the Guardians on a huge home run by Gabriel Arias.
Yeah, I think back to that home run. Arias was a 9-pitch at bat. He had fouled off some really good pitches from Yuri Perez, and at that point, he was in swing mode, and I thought to myself, here he's going to strike out just because he's susceptible to change at speeds or something. But he got the pitch that he wanted, and he unloaded on it 433 feet into the bleachers. And you and I kind of both looked at each other when he hit that ball, and it's like, yeah, that was the perfect ending to a really good at bat for Gabriel Arias.
Yeah, and he's had a solid season, Joe, and this is a guy that drove in 7 runs in the Mets series. He's been driving in some big runs, and that was that 3-run dong right there, put him right back in the game, tied it up, and but they just the bullpen, the middle relievers just couldn't hold it, and the Marlins have some hitters on this team, Joe. I mean, they're hitting 251 as a team, young hitters, young aggressive hitters, and they were fun to watch tonight. They did not miss many.
Yeah, I defy you without looking down at your notes to tell me three hitters in that Marlins lineup, not named Kyle Stowers or Jacob Marcy right now, but Xavier Edwards leads off the game with a solo home run. Stephen Kwan matched that in the first inning. First time since 2023 that the Guardians and their opponent had both hit leadoff home runs in the game. That goes back to a game in Texas where Marcus Semien and Stephen Kwan had done that. Been even longer since Cleveland and an opponent in Progressive Field had both hit leadoff home runs. That goes back to 2015 when the Royals were here, and Alex Gordon, you remember Alex Gordon,
Yeah.
always used to torture Cleveland. He hit a leadoff home run, as did Jason Kipnis in that game. It's been a while since the double leadoff home run here in Progressive Field. That was there was not much else going on. It was 4-1 for a while until Gabriel Arias came up in the fourth inning. And then the Guardians were held silent after that offensively. Only 5 hits. They did commit an error. It was not a great game, and it was one that Stephen Vogt said after the game, we got to wash this one out. It's a one-off. It's an outlier. But we go back to, it's been since April, the end of April, when they had back-to-back games here at Progressive Field, where we saw position players in the game at the end pitching, and we saw that again tonight with Austin Hedges.
Yeah, Hedges comes in the ninth inning, just trying to save the bullpen a little bit, throws a scoreless inning, Joe. Gives up 2 singles. We saw, and the defensive alignment was behind him was very interesting as well. Carlos Santana makes his return to third base for the first time since 2018. He's at the hot corner. We saw, Nolan Jones in left field. Interesting, so the game was out of hand. They wanted to give Ramirez a little bit of a rest, so Carlos goes in there. He didn't start tonight, and we were talking to him after the game, Joe, and he said, "I wish they would have hit me a ball." He was waiting for a ground ball, but he didn't get one.
Yeah, it was interesting because he was on the field, knowing that he wasn't playing in the game, or at least starting in the game earlier in the afternoon. We saw him at third base with Jose Ramirez while the Guardians were taking infield practice. He had a pink glove out there. I think he wore the pink glove out to the field tonight. But during warm-ups, he was out there fielding ground balls, and he did play a couple of seasons at third base. That they had him over there after he moved off of catcher because of the concussions. He moved to third base before he went to the outfield, and all over the place, bouncing around to sort of accommodate things, and finally finding a home and a Gold Glove over at first base. But Carlos Santana, a veteran guy, he didn't have to go out there and play third base today, and that was, sort of it. When you get to the point where a position player is pitching at the end of the game to try and it's easy to make a joke out of it or try to laugh at it from a fan or a media's perspective. The guys on the field are serious about it. They're getting their butts kicked anyways. It's not like a joke or a laughing matter for them.
Yeah, they just want to get the game over, Joe. Just get the game over as fast as possible with as little damage as possible and no one get hurt. So, it was good to see Hedges. Hedges has done this before. This was his maybe 10th appearance or
It was the second time this season he's appeared in relief and 7th in his career.
Yeah.
He actually, with the scoreless inning, he lowered his career ERA 3.52. He's given up 3 earned runs in 7 2/3 innings pitched. But, in every one of those games, the team that he's pitching for, usually the Guardians, they're 0-7 in those games.
Yeah, he's there for one reason: just get the game over with, save a bullpen arm, and don't get hurt. And those guys. Chris Jimenez used to do that, fill that same role, and those guys are really smart about it, Joe. They're not out there throwing breaking balls and knuckleballs, and they're not trying to throw 90 miles an hour. They're just kind of lobbing it in there and just get it over with.
Well, Hedges wasn't throwing 90 miles an hour. He was sitting right around 72, 73. The StatCast was picking it up as a changeup, which is kind of funny. He was throwing all fastballs, but he was registering his changeups because that's what a starting pitcher's the very low end of a changeup for a starting pitcher. Again, you're right. The most important thing: get through it healthy. Don't have anybody get hurt. We did see a couple of nice defensive plays. There was a diving catch in right field by Daniel Schneemann. There were a couple of opportunities for guys to be out there and throughout the game. But generally this is a game that the Guardians are going to want to forget, and it's a game that knocks them back. With the Tigers beating the White Sox earlier in the day, it knocks them back to 6.5 games out in the AL Central. And as we're recording this, the Yankees were tied with the Twins in the AL wildcard race. The Guardians are sitting right now 1 game back, a game and a half back, but it could be 2 games back by the end of the night.
Yeah, Joe, it's, the season is getting down to crunch time. That was the 119th game tonight. Almost as Hedges said, every game they play from this point on, or even from the last couple of weeks, is like a playoff game. They've got to win as many games as possible. You're going to run into a game like this occasionally. Unfortunately, they've been playing really good baseball. This was only their second loss in the last 8 games. I think they're 22 and 9 in their last 31 games. So they're playing good baseball. They just have to sustain this, Joe, and just kind of take care of their own business and see what happens when the season, when you get down to that mid September, and see where you're sitting.
Gabriel Arias again, 1 for 3. That 3-run home run gave him. He's hit safely in 13 of the last 16 games that he's played since July 26th. He's hitting .255 in that stretch with 3 home runs, 12 RBIs. That home run, 433-foot home run to the bleachers and left, his second longest of the season. He hit one, I believe it was in Baltimore, that was 440 feet. Oh no, that was at Citi Field. That was the bomb that he hit at Citi Field the other day, last week, actually, a week ago. So 440 feet on that home run. Just, what have we seen out of Gabe Arias that gives you sort of that confidence moving forward that he's sort of figuring things out?
Yeah, Joe, I was looking, he always stands deep in the box, deep in that deep far corner to the batter's box, the right-handed hitter's batter's box. I think it gives him an angle to go, to hit the ball up the middle or through to the right side. But I've been watching him lately. It looks like he's moved up closer to the plate. He's a little closer to the plate. And maybe that's given him a little more plate coverage on that outside pitch. But he's been a solid guy this year, Joe. I mean, obviously he hurt the ankle. He got sent down. Then he moves over to shortstop. And I think it just shows you what the Guardians feel about him, is that they gave him the shortstop job back when he came back from the ankle injury and moved Rocchio to second base. And, Rocchio's he's a real good shortstop. So,
Yeah.
I think that was kind of a confidence booster for Arias.
Yeah, it feels more like Rocchio's skill set makes him a little bit more adaptable to that second base job, as opposed to, sort of trying to force him back at shortstop and make Arias move over. It feels to me like you're wasting just a gifted arm if you try to play Arias at second base.
Yeah.
Whereas, Rocchio has a little bit more different angles he can throw from, arm angles he can throw from, a little bit smoother on that. He just needs to get more reps there at second base. I don't see, unless something drastic happens, I don't see that Arias Rocchio, keystone combination there up the middle changing much throughout the remainder of the season. And you've got Travis Bazzana. I think he picked up his first hit tonight at AAA, and he's going to be playing there for the rest of the season. And I would imagine he's got to get an invite to Major League Camp at spring training, with an opportunity to maybe try and make the club.
Yeah, for sure. Then you've got Juan Brito in the mix there too. So that's going to be a really, really interesting competition. Come next spring training with in the middle of the infield for the Guardians. I'm really anxious to see Bazzana. He made his big league debut. I mean, his AAA debut Tuesday, and he was involved in a couple double plays there, Joe.
Yeah, and defensively is where Bazzana is going to have to sort of make the most improvements and the most strides. And really, the offseason, he's not going to get that opportunity. He's not going to get that chance. It's only going to be, when they hit the dirt at spring training, that he can start getting the reps and the real feel for it, and to try and make that move. So I really don't see Bazzana being a factor in the, on field and at the major league level until at least the end of May of next season, if that. But, I've been saying that all along, so we'll see where that plays out. I wanted to mention, along with Major League Baseball's Players Weekend coming up this weekend, they're going back to, the players are going to wear hats with their numbers on them and, different designs. They'll have different bats and cleats and gloves. The uniform regulations are going to be sort of relaxed again. In the past, we've seen completely different uniforms. They did a black and white uniform. They did the uniforms with the nicknames on the back in the past, but they're bringing Players Weekend back, sort of celebrating the journey of the player from, from Little League all the way through the majors. And one of the things that Major League Baseball did was they put together a video series called No Easy Outs, and they interviewed Stephen Kwan about his journey. And one of the things that Kwan talked about was the imposter syndrome that he deals with, or he's dealt with in his career. Sort of the that speech from Rudy, "You're 5 foot nothing, 100 and nothing," that kind of thing, thinking that he didn't belong at every level and every stop that he reached. And you look out there now and you see a guy who you would assume is confident. He's got 3 Gold Gloves. He plays the smoothest left field you've ever seen. And he's one of the prototypical leadoff hitter. But inside, you never know what's working in somebody's head. And to watch that video and to see Stephen Kwan just sort of lay it all out there about what his feelings are behind all of that, I thought it was tremendous. Just your impressions of Stephen Kwan and whether or not he belongs. I think we can all agree he belongs at the top of a major league lineup.
There's no doubt about that, Joe. And you like that. You like to see guys that are fueled by that inner fire, that inner that something is pushing them, because you're right. Stephen Kwan, you see him walking down the street, you would never think he was, a big league ball player. I mean, or had the success that he's had. He's not that big. He's not that, intimidating. I mean, he's not like a physical specimen, but he gets the job done. And, that and just in talking to him when growing up, he said his dad always said, "You're not that big. You got to do the little things right. You've got to run the bases. You've got to catch. You play defense. You've got to bunt. You've got to hit behind a runner. You've got to do all those things to make yourself noticed." And now he's kind of added the cherry on the top with great defense in left field. He's developing leadoff hitters, developing some power. That was his 10th home run tonight. So just a joy to watch. And the Guardians drafted him, developed him, and guided him through this journey. And he's at the peak of his profession right now.
Yeah, as much as Aaron Judge and Vlad Guerrero and the big sluggers who hit the 450-foot home runs are, they're the essence of Players Weekend. I think a story like Stephen Kwan, a guy who, had no sort of expectations like that, and his journey to the major leagues, it sort of gives everybody not just hope, but, somebody to root for, somebody to pull for. I would pull for Stephen Kwan over Aaron Judge, any day of the week. And that's not just because Aaron Judge plays for the Yankees, and you all know my feelings about the Yankees. As far as one of the things that stuck out in that video, Stephen Kwan said he got to Oregon State and, he was looking at a recruiting blog, and it said that year, his freshman year, that Oregon State had the #1 recruiting class in the country that year. And he's like, and I'm part of that class, and he couldn't believe it. So that's just those negative thoughts, those weird, sort of things. Everybody has them, even major leaguers, even a guy like Stephen Kwan, who's on his way to his 4th straight Gold Glove and in his 2nd All-Star season. I just thought it was a tremendous little feature there that MLB ran.
This goes to show you, Joe, like we've said this time and time again, baseball is probably the only professional sport where you don't have to be 6'2" to play it. You don't have to weigh 220 pounds. If you can play, you can play. If you have the talent to play a certain position, you don't have to be the biggest guy in the field. It's talent, it's reactions, that fast motor skill. It's just that's why it's probably the best game in the world. I mean, the best game for a human, for people to relate to. You don't have to weigh 300 pounds and run a 440 to play baseball.
Hoynesy, you've been covering baseball for 43 years. You're damn right that baseball is the best game in the world, and you better sing that from the rooftops. I know that's what you believe in your heart. So that's going to wrap up tonight's edition of the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. We will be back on Friday to preview the Braves coming to town. Hoynesy, we'll talk to you then.
Good deal.